Hello and welcome to Progressive Mindset, which is the podcast for entrepreneurs that are looking to progress both themselves but the business too. I am Jason Kemsley.
And I'm Bradley Monday. And today we're going to get into something a little bit meatier than some of our previous topics. We're going to talk about getting to that £1 million in revenue.
$1 million.
Or $1 million. $1 million. It's the nice round number of $1 million in whatever currency you work in. So we're covering a really, I think there's lots of different periods of a business. This one for me is really exciting. I have very fond memories back when we were working towards our first $1 million.
I recall the moment I knew it was $1 million and that moment. But I think everyone does, but then the second one isn't anywhere near what you think it's going to be, and I think it gets a bit more difficult and the seriousness starts to hit you. There's quite a lot going on. There's a lot to go wrong.
I agree. I think it changes, and you see your business mature beyond that $1 million. I think you as an individual have to mature as well. And I actually wanted to start this off with, yes, we're going to talk about all the things that you could do in your business to drive you to $1 million, but to not try and get there too fast and to enjoy the journey.
You can't, if it's anything like us, we've gone past $1 million, we've gone past 2 million. That process, usually you want to stick around, you want to see it thrive, you want to see what you can make that. You want to see what you can make this thing that you've managed to create something half decent out of. So it's very rare you get, you probably don't get more than 2 or 3 opportunities in your life to be an integral, everyday part of something on that journey of 0 to $1 million. And so cherish it, really do cherish it. I know it's a big goal, but it doesn't come many times.
No, and also the businesses that you see out there that appear to have become overnight successes, very, very often aren't. Yep. There's an awful lot of hard graft in the years when they just weren't known.
Yep, absolutely.
And then suddenly they become popular overnight. So really do enjoy that journey and trying to get to, even this milestone of $1 million before you're ready and too quickly can just create problems that you don't need. Right?
Absolutely.
That you are growing. If this is your first time around, you're growing as an individual, and your business is finding its feet, and there'll be problems along the way that you need to fix. And if you're accelerating that a little bit too fast, it'll go wrong.
Can I just add something in here that's a big bugbear of, I know, both of us? Don't watch videos of these £500 million CEOs and the advice. Yes, the advice is applicable. You need very different skills and traits to get from the 0 to $1 million than you do to go from the 1 to 5, the 5 to 25, 25 to 100, whatever those brackets are. And so, yes, delegating, all those things that we talk and we hear about, that 0 to $1 million is hard graft, rolling those sleeves up, mm-hmm. getting stuck in, which we're going to talk about. But you can't believe or lean too much into some of these things you read and see. It's a bit different, that first part.
Yeah, even in our own previous episodes, we've talked very heavily around processes and building management teams and all that sort of stuff.
That doesn't exist.
That actually isn't required at this early stage. So we're going to cover some what I would suggest high level points, but also wanting to get into. Let's just start to break this down. It is when you're first starting out, you're in the early stages of the journey. It can definitely feel
it's daunting.
Like it's a mountain that you've got to climb. So we need to break this down.
So can we? $1 million to me is a big number. I think actually that's a ridiculous statement. It is to most people. 99% of the world, £1 million, dollars, whatever. It's a big number. I think you, and because you're a numbers guy as well, you know what that breaks down to, and it makes it feel like it isn't a big number.
Yeah, and it's not. So when we get into the breaking down, it's not about okay, we're starting from zero. Let's be at £1 million tomorrow. It's just about okay, is $1 million too far off to be aiming for right now?
Yep.
And it's just making things feel more palatable.
Absolutely.
But before we go into that, I wanted to touch on a story that I've just been reminded of, and I'll really early on in our journey with our current business. We are going back over a decade ago now. It's sort of been 14 years, and so much younger and that sort of stuff. I will never
much
forget.
more energetic.
I will never forget wandering into our accounts firm. It was back in the day when your accountant used to meet with you. That's how far back we're going, right? These days it'll be virtual at best. But I went and I sat down with the owner of our accountancy firm, and we'd just done 250k. As I say, super early on in the journey, and we'd had what I considered to be a good year. And he turned around and he said, "Yeah, but at 250k, you're not really a real business." And whether or not I agree with that statement, it
Stuck with
it
you.
just gave me so much fire and going to just drive forward and go, I'll show you real business, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back in that next year and just demonstrate to him how much further we'd come. So yeah, along the way, you're going to get people say things that don't necessarily. I don't think he meant any harm by it, but just to turn that into I'm not going to be disheartened by what you just said. I'll see you next year.
Out of interest, do you know where they currently stand
As a business,
turnover wise?
he's now retired.
Oh, okay.
But he did
It
go.
just would have been a nice end to that story if the business now was actually bigger than the guy you sat with. That would be a super cool way to interact with him. It's a great time to grab a coffee. And do you remember that conversation we had?
So what it was for me was going back in the next year and with the new numbers being a proper business in his eyes. But I sat down, I reminded him of what he'd said to me because he didn't remember it. He actually apologized for saying it. I said, I didn't tell you that because I wanted you to apologize. I told you that because it actually enhanced the fire that I had to go and show you that I was, that you were wrong and that we were a real business. We were just on a journey.
Absolutely. But there is something with that, right? I think that's why the million is such a sort of pivotal target for many people. Is it does make you feel like I've kind of got something proper now. I've kind of got something decent.
Yeah. So I mean, if we look at when you're £1 million business, a strong business it does 20% net profit. I think if you're at that level, actually you have a very healthy business. On £1 million, when you're taking 200k profit, whether you're reinvesting that or taking that back for yourself or whatever it is, actually that's a good sum of money.
Absolutely.
If you are running a smaller business that is that 250k business, it's not feasible. You're not going to be taking home 200k. So it's just the million is that nice scale where actually you can take home.
And you start to see the fruits of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you don't have to take that home for years and years. We were reinvesting that money and actually putting that back into the business to go to the next step. What you do with it and where you go with it is
probably an episode in itself.
Yeah, it depends on your goals. And we did a little bit about goals a couple of episodes ago, but that's why we sort of focus in on the middle. It's a nice million. It's a nice round number, and actually you can be making some good profit out of it as well. So let's just sort of break that down. What I wanted to look at is we're going to talk a little bit in this episode as well about annual recurring, monthly recurring, and one-off. If you want to get some more knowledge on those topics, maybe go and revisit our previous episode where we talked about those actually in prep for this. So what does that look like? So I wanted to look at this as let's say you're in one-off sales business.
Yep, you got an e-commerce website. You sell mugs.
Yep, you're going to need to sell if you want to be at £1 million. Assuming that the maths works out, you're taking out all seasonality, all of that sort of stuff. You need to do just below £84,000 a month in order to get to your £1 million target.
So already we're starting to see how that number is a bit more palatable when you look at what a 12-month period is. It's a long period, right? So 84,000. Okay.
So I'm not going to go down to mugs because I don't think we're selling mugs at £100, $100, but let's assume that the product you're selling is worth £100, dollars in your respective currency. So you need to be selling, 840 of these on a monthly basis to get to where you want to go. And what I like about this is it just allows us to break them down. Hang on a minute, can I sell 840 of these or not? And if 840 is just way off, actually in this right now we need to focus on something that's much more manageable. What I'm trying to get to is let's work out a target. Where do we want to go?
And then we break it down.
And then find out if it's achievable. And we do this even now in our business. We'll set hey, here's where we want to go. And then you track it back. Well, what does that mean in terms of leads, et cetera, et cetera?
So go on the mug example. If we break it down, can we sell 3 mugs a day? If I can sell 3 mugs a day, it's not 3, is it 30? Sorry. Over that period, over a 30-day period.
Yep.
I should reach my target. If I can do that consistently, yes, peaks and troughs, etc. And so now we're starting to look at, right, we need to sell 30 a day. How many leads do we need to get to the website to sell 30 a day? Right, well, for every 30 we sell, we've got 80 that hit the website. For 80 to hit the website, we lose 20 immediately. And we can start to work from what you've just set as $1 million, back to the month, back to the day, back to, right, what we need to do on marketing, what we need to do on sales. And now we've got this entire pipeline that we can aim for across the business to give us some unity.
Absolutely. And I wanted to come on to that sort of the leading metrics rather than the trailing metrics. If we know how many we need to sell, that's not the metric that we want to be measuring. Because if we get towards the end of the month and we haven't quite sold enough, you are quite often too late to fix that. That's done, and we'll have to make it up in the next month. Whereas, as you suggested, if you know how many people buy through your website, and let's say it's a 20% of people buy through the website, then you know exactly how many visitors you need to your website to sell the number of items that you need to sell.
Yeah.
So we want to be tracking those metrics, those leading metrics, as far back as you possibly can. And depending on the type of your business, that might be the number of, you now know the number of emails you need to send out in order to generate your pipeline and that sort of stuff.
And that's a key point, is many people target forward. Okay, I'm going to spend X on marketing. I get X in. I get X sales. Well, hold up a minute. That only produces me that amount. So what we're talking about is doing it in the reverse. This is what the goal is. Say $1 million. Let's break it down. Okay, we need to get X number of leads in. And now what ways can we do to get this many leads in, which turn into this many conversions, this many repeat purchases, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think quite often people are spending their marketing budget without knowing what that produces.
Oh, the amount of times I've seen someone with a marketing and they say, yeah, it's working, we're getting leads. I'm sorry. How do you know that let's say there's 20 options out there for you. How do you know that one returns 10 leads? How do you know that next one doesn't return 100? You've got to measure that in some way, shape or form, especially on this. I'm sorry to take us off tangent. This 0 to 1 million, we are trying to be as lean as possible. We're trying to be as effective as possible. I'm looking at every subscription we've got, or I'm looking at every expense to some degree. Now, every quarter, maybe I'll look through, right, let's have a little clean up, etc. So it does change quite quickly.
And so don't throw your marketing money out the wall in comparison to that. Is and you might find when you track it backwards, maybe actually the amount of marketing spend you'd need to do to get there just isn't palatable, and it makes you just come back to the drawing board and go, hey, we need a more effective way to take this to market if we want to get to where we want to get to. So it really does engage.
But it allows you to set goals that are achievable, which is the big thing, right? If you set a target on January 1st, we're going to do $1 million this year, but you can't afford the 4 times marketing budget you need to get there, why wait 12 months to all to be disappointed and sat in a room wondering why you all were slaving away, feeling like you're working 80 hours a week, but you didn't reach it? It was never possible.
Yep. No, indeed. We're going to get onto that in a little bit about the goal setting that needs to come with this as well. Before we moved on too much, we talked about how much we'd need to sell per month if we were one time.
Yep.
Just to give you a figure in terms of monthly reoccurring, if we made our service or the product that we're providing a monthly reoccurring service, it'd be just shy of 13k a month that we'd need to add on to our monthly reoccurring services.
So January 1st was 0, add 13k, bill 13k. Month 2, if I had 13k, we bill 26.
Yep.
And so on and so on.
And keep moving that forward. So it definitely changes the figure you're looking at. Whether it changes the effort it depends on your business and that sort of stuff. But it's a nice way to look at
backwards that we've just talked about. Goal setting exists.
Yes, absolutely. So just, I guess, be mindful that if you do have seasonality in there and that sort of stuff, and you are relying on monthly reoccurring for your forecasting, if you start to fall behind in that first quarter, second quarter, it really does carry over into Q3, Q4. It's very difficult to play catch up.
The amount compounds in the positive direction, but it likewise compounds in a negative
direction. Yeah.
Right, I need to make up. We sold $5,000 less last month, but now we need to make up 8 because we've got less billing periods or whatever it works out to be.
So let's get into. We've done numbers.
Yep.
We've put everyone to sleep. Let's try and wake everyone up a little bit. Let's talk about some planning. So the £1 million for you might be a 10-year goal. It might be a 3-year goal. However far that is out, what I think we should talk about in this episode is the 3-year and the 1 year.
Yep.
And there's multiple different ways that we've used across the years to plan this. We started with we used to use an orb chart type scenario where you've got your different sections about, right, where am I going? What numbers are we going to do across the next 3 years? So you have your first year in your outer ring, and then second year, third year. And so these are the numbers. And in order to get to those numbers, we're going to target these regions. We're going to need this many people to deliver, and sort of building out what does your business look like across those 3 years. That's one way you could do things. Big fan of just actually getting down on paper. Where do we want to be? What does this look like in terms of average customer spend?
Absolutely.
Existing customer growth, if we're reoccurring, that sort of stuff. But also putting down just high-level things that you're going to need to achieve across the next 3 years. What does the business look like in that 3 years in terms of people, certain things you might be doing, selling, etc., etc.
And so on that, on our journey and on journeys I've seen, the biggest takeaway from what you've just said is don't over-engineer it. Is our goals, our planning, etc., 0 to 1 million were wildly less time consumptive. I don't even know if that's a word.
Are you making up words?
I think I'm making up words. It took up far less time than it does now. And what I mean by that is there is a balancing act between you're wearing a few hats, typically you're doing a few things, and planning, goal setting with your team, etc.
Yep.
Is they need to be functional, they need to be purposeful, they need to be driven. I see too many people over-engineer them.
Less is more is what you're getting at, right?
Absolutely. But it has to hit the spot, right? We need this to be able to get to this, etc. But I see so many people, oh, well, I'm waiting to open the floodgates until I've got this, and this ready. No, we need to be on it. We need to be selling constantly, even while we're working on all this stuff.
So to summarize that, perhaps don't wait for perfection.
Absolutely.
Perfection is definitely a killer when you're on this, especially early journey. Iteration is what you need. Get something out there, whatever it is, and then iterate through, make it better.
Iterate and repetition.
Absolutely. Yep. So we've got we talked a little bit about 3-year goals, and where we want to be in 3 years. We're using risk analysis methods. Let's just get a SWOT together. All of those sorts of things. What's going to be, the strengths, the weaknesses. Don't forget make sure there's positives and negatives in there.
Absolutely.
And that might help us to sort of shape what that business looks like in 3 years. And then we come down into the detail, into the 1 year. So I reckon 5 to 7 goals, and they are tangible things. They're measurable across this year. You know when you've hit them. Yeah. Things
Yep.
we need to do within the business. But this year we're going to work towards the 3-year. So we're looking at the 3-year trajectory for things we need to do this year to meet both this year's numbers and across the next 3 years. So we've got those in there, and get your 1-year numbers in there. So work out, how does your business grow? What does that trend line look like? If you've got that sort of information, we're probably not going to take 1 million, divide it by 3 if that's where we're going in 3 years, and do that across, evenly across those years. Usually you do get a bit of a curve with growth. Try and get that down as well. I think that gives us a nice place to start, right? We've got a plan now. That's half the battle, is getting something down so that you know at least where you're trying to go.
Absolutely, and know when you've got enough to go and crack on. If it's quite interesting. If I look back to our 0 to 1 million journey, I don't know if I would say I think we needed to do more of that, or we done the right amount. Well, I think when you're more than 1 million, it's very easy to say we should have probably done more planning. In that moment, you really are sort of sleeves up, but you need a guiding light. You need these goals as a guiding light to keep you, because you typically at that size don't have a leadership team. You typically at that size don't maybe have that many managers or middle managers around you. And so you or your business partners need that guiding light to bring you all on the same page, so that, in your words, we are rowing together in the same direction.
Yeah. It's definitely that early stage is when you're identifying people that might sit on your leadership team. Absolutely. For beyond. So it's definitely a time to find great people that recognize a journey, recognize the value in what you're doing, and want to come and allow them in to create that vision as well, bounce ideas off. It is it's a lonely space being an entrepreneur sometimes. And so just having people that are sharing in your passion makes a real good sense at that stage. What else have we got?
I think the big thing for me in that journey is identifying in a 0 to 1 million, your time is more precious than it may ever be. I think it works in the inverse to what people perceive it to be. If you're 500 million, your time's very expensive. It is, correct. The time to the business when you're in that 0 to 1 million needs you more than ever. And how you spend it is what I mean by that. So if you waste an hour a day on that 0 to 1 million, it makes a substantial difference based on the number of people you've got, the number of right bodies in right seats, etc., etc. When you're at 500 million, there's many more levels to catch things, or there's people working to make areas better without you, etc. So in that 0 to 1 million, you want to be as efficient and as effective with your time as possible. And so what I think we done quite a good job at this, I have to say, is we eliminated the lost leaders, the things that don't drive us towards that target.
Yeah. And I think there's always going to be, when you start on your journey, there's a tendency to pick up anything and everything in terms of customers. So I think it's a good exercise quite early on to work out what type of customer are you going after.
Yep.
And I don't want to talk down the going after anything and everything, because I think it can actually get you to a point. But you've got to identify when those people, actually, to allude back to what you were saying about time sapping things, when you've got customers that are taking up more of your time than they should be, that's when you've reached that point where it's like, right, we want more of what we know works, and less of others.
Absolutely. While you do that, I'm just gonna. I saw a really interesting thing I want to mention regarding this, but it's super. Deals bring money, yes. If something really smells off, I get that it's money. I get that it's revenue that's driving you towards this goal, but the time it takes, the effort it takes, your time is so valuable at that period. You don't want to spend it on someone that's not going to help you in any way, shape or form get there, and probably won't be there when you're on the 1 to 5 million journey.
And just to build on that, it can come from, hey, someone wants something that's a little bit bespoke. And yeah, how much of that time you've got to support this or deliver this moving forwards. And it's really important that you bear that in mind throughout your journey as to, hey, maybe early on you do some of that because you need revenue, you need to keep the lights on. But just knowing when it's time to, one, stop offering these bespoke things that you don't do in the norm, and when to start to exit out those ones that have now become time saps. I wanted to move on while you're looking for whatever magic you're looking for there, Jace. I saw something the other day where someone said, we used to offer when we were smaller, we used to offer our services at a lower price point. And now we're at a slightly higher price point because it appears to get more expensive to deliver service as you grow.
Yep. And
they were around, the high figure, they were around the £1 million at this point. And I don't actually agree with that, but I wanted to talk it through so that you can bear it in mind. Is actually the reason it feels like it gets more expensive is because you're bringing in other people that cost real money, as it were.
Yep.
That you used to do yourself, not putting value on your time. So It really does sort of mirror what you were saying in terms of you can deliver stuff at seemingly nothing because actually, it's amazing what you can actually live on when you first start in a business. It's about making sure that actually whether you choose to sell it at an effective loss or not to get your business off the ground, it's really important to know what cost do you come out at and what do you value your time at so that you can build that into knowing the real cost of what you're delivering. Because otherwise, exactly as this person was saying, when you start to bring people onto your team, you're going to find yourself in a tricky spot if you can't suddenly afford to deliver your services. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be mindful that you will need to potentially have a price rise at that point when it just allows you to forecast and plan.
So I'm just going to quickly read this. This is a description I thought was very good, which is a business in the 0 to 750 range, but I think it's fairly applicable here. This is what most of them look like. I'm reading this so that you can try and break that mold a little bit by thinking about these other things. The business owners are huffing and puffing day after day, just trying to keep their business open one stride at a time and growing at the rate they'd like. They're the chief everything officer, from social media to installing sinks or whatever they do, and you do whatever it takes to get the job done. They're in an exhilarating place to be, and that's exactly what it should be, but now is the time to turn it into a business and not just a job. It's a bit niche, it's a bit there, but you are doing a bit of everything. And so if you can get ahead of that with your goals, if you can get ahead of that with the right person in these right roles, you can very quickly make that journey a bit easier, a bit more seamless, rather than the falling into it, trying to make it happen. You can make it a bit more effective and easier than the normal.
Absolutely. And that almost perfectly comes back round to my story that I started out with. There you go. So if you're in that, what was that, to 750?
That was to 750,000, yeah.
Okay, so if you're in that mark to 750 and you find yourself doing a bit of everything, the passage that Jason read has just said that you've got a job and that you don't run a real business. So you can take that and you can use that for fire to grow your business in a very similar way I did. And
I think a future episode, and we'll touch upon it, but it's that next stage is, you've got to that. Now what next? How do you set up a management framework? How do you set one? We've got some episodes, but there's definitely more to come on this topic.
Yeah, so let's because we haven't talked about processes, frameworks, that kind of thing, let's just round off by saying, actually, up to $1 million, it's only when you start to approach that $1 million that those kind of things really creep in and become important.
Yep.
Until then, you're still finding your way. You are being the master of everything. So processes where they're appropriate, but I don't think over-architect them in those early stages, because you're still very much finding your way.
Engineering.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
And we'll jump into the next phase on the next episode, but if there's any parts that you want us to dive into deeper, then please by all means leave a comment, etc., and we can happily do so. That is one we've definitely been there and done and got the war wounds for as well, and we will catch you on the next episode. next episode.
See you.
Bye bye.